Now this is going to be a quick little video. I've got a broken bolt in the engine block. I'm not going to show you all the long little details. I'm just going to show you the main steps. You can see the broken bolt there. Hopefully the camera zooms in. Now it's been degreased and wire brushed. It's clean. The next thing I'm going to do is weld a nut to it, and hopefully the heat from welding will help crack it loose and the nut doesn't break off at the weld, and that broken bolt will come out. Okay, I got a nut to weld onto that broken stud. It's got to be cleaned up a little bit. I want it to have a nice solid weld, so put it on the wire wheel. Because I am welding to the inside, I'm going to clean that out as well. Alright, it's time to weld the nut on. I've got my machine turned up pretty high. I want a lot of heat getting into the nut and through the bolt into the block. The more I can put heat into the bolt, get it to swell, get the block to take some of that heat, and it'll break that bond between the threads. And now we got to let that cool for a little bit. Alright, the nut is welded on. This is the most important part here, is to not force it, because the weld is strong, but that nut goes into the cooling jacket. I mean, the broken stud goes in, it's hot in there, goes into the cooling jacket, and there's crust on it back there. So you want to just start to get it to move a little bit and then go back and just get it to wiggle back and forth just a little bit at a time. I already broke this loose, but I haven't taken it completely out. But I'm just redoing this so you can see. Get it to move a little bit back and forth. Try to go a little bit more in the out direction each time. And then when you get some movement, wiggle it. Get those threads moving back and forth on each other. They'll clean themselves up a little bit. And go a little more each time. And as you do this, you'll eventually break the crust off the back. You know, the threads that are sitting in the water jacket that are all cruddy. Little bit at a time, and that crud will break off. And by welding this, I had the welder turned up pretty high. You know, the bolt and the nut are both heavy, thick metals, so it could take a lot of heat. And I wanted a lot of heat. I wanted heat to transfer through the bolt to the back and get that crud to break loose and help expand the bolt and the block itself. They will expand a little bit and break that bond in the threads between the bolt and the threads in the block. Get that bond to break, and makes it a little easier to get out. The last thing I wanted to do was to have to file that bolt flat so I can drill a hole through the center, and that's worst case scenario. If you have to drill a hole through the center and try to use an easy out, and God forbid you break the easy out off in there, then you really got a problem. At that point, you're probably going to have to take the block out, take the engine out. But this is working. It's coming out. This is working really well. And my friend Steve, the owner of this car, he's going to be happy. It's almost out. comes. There it is. It is out. Catastrophe averted. And the threads don't look bad, so I will run a clean out thread through, tap through those threads in the block just to make sure they're good and clean them up. But the threads on this broken stud look good, so I'm pretty confident the ones inside the block are going to be good too. So there it is. That's how you get out a broken stud. We were fortunate that there was enough studs sticking out that we could weld a nut on it. That is the preferred way. And the original thing that got me in here, and this is kind of typical when you're working on these older cars. This one hasn't been restored. This car is kind of original. It's been driven and had just basic maintenance for the last 40, what is it, a 73? So it's almost 50 years old. But basic maintenance. But this core plug, let me get that. Let me show you that. This is interesting, the progression here of, and a lot of jobs are like this when you're working on old cars. The original issue was broken motor mount. You can see the stud maybe here is still hanging out. I haven't finished tightening this engine mount, but the engine mounts is the job I was doing here. And then I saw that this plug was leaking, and you can see after removing it, the rod had just pushed right through. I mean, it was leaking badly. And the side ones have been changed at some point in the past, but this one, I don't know, either they didn't change it or they just put a steel one in, and the steel is rusting. The side ones are brass. So I knocked this out to replace that, and if I'm doing this one, that one was steel, so get that one out. And as I'm taking the power steering bracket off, this bolt just comes right out. This one here comes right out. It's been in there broken for who knows how long. And like I explained to the owner, when you have a leak here, you'll see it leaking out to the atmosphere, but you won't see it leaking into the engine. When coolant runs down through here, and it might have been, it gets into the engine oil and starts to dilute the engine oil with coolant. Now you're mixing water and oil together, and it becomes a froth, and it's no longer oil. And when that gets circulated throughout the engine, it just destroys the bearings. So even though you see coolant leaking out, more than likely it's also leaking in. So you got to change the oil after something like that, whenever you have a coolant leak. A lot of people don't realize that, but you're better off in the long run changing the oil before you restart the engine. So I hope everybody learned something today. My learning never stops, and I enjoy passing on a little bit that I know to others. Thanks.